Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Gerson. I'm a psychotherapist and the founder and clinical director of Columbus Park and also of My Three Square Virtual Meal Support. And I'm really excited to have you join us today for our very first installment of Meet and Eat, which is a completely free platform for folks like you out in the community to join us at lunchtime several times a week to have a meal together and to work on some skills as we're doing that, and also to bring together different guests who have interesting short stories to share and experiences that might inspire and educate and otherwise be of interest to our community. So the way this is going to work is that we're going to start with a basic check-in around the meal components that we brought to the table today. And so if you didn't bring a meal today, that's totally fine. You can just keep it in mind for the next time if you decide to tune in again. But McCall, my special guest, and I did bring meals. So we are going to be eating our lunches as we speak with you. So first, let me just introduce our very special guest today, McCall Manning Dempsey. She is the founder of Southern Smash, and we will talk about Southern Smash today, so you can hear all about it. She's also an advocate, a speaker, and also a person in her own recovery from an eating disorder. So we're going to ask her a lot of questions today, and it should be really engaging and interesting for everybody. But before we start with that, I'm just going to review with you what the structure will be for the day. And the structure that we're going to use today mimics the therapeutic meal structure that we use in a treatment setting. So the first thing I want to do is check in on meal components. And I want to preface this with the fact that everybody has different needs. Our needs are completely individual. My needs are different than your needs. Your needs are different than McCall's needs. But what we try to do is, without getting into too much nitty-gritty of putting a meal together, we really just try to create a balanced meal that should be tasty and that involves certain components that we view as important or essential in making a balanced meal. So we typically advise people to bring to our meal supports a meal that has a carbohydrate, a protein, a fat, and possibly a fruit or vegetable as well. Generally, a really good example of a balanced meal for a lunch meal support would be a sandwich with some kind of a side. It could be carrots and hummus, or it could be a soup, or it could be a salad or a fruit salad. I'm going to share with you my meal today. So I'm going to kind of tip my computer. So you can see I have a sandwich and potato chips. My sandwich is made on brioche bread. It's kind of just some bread that we had around in the house. Right now during this crisis, it's not as easy to get food that we need. So I'm using things that we had around. And you'll see here, it's these kind of little rolls. They're brioche rolls, and they're sort of on the small side. So I decided to make myself 1.5 because I felt like one of these brioche rolls wasn't really quite a full sandwich. And knowing myself and how I experience hunger and fullness, and I'm coming into this meal actually pretty hungry right now. I knew that one brioche roll as a sandwich wouldn't be enough for me. So I made 1.5. My sandwich, if you can see, has a couple slices of turkey and American cheese with some honey mustard. I'm not a big fan of American cheese, but it's what we had, so kind of going with it. And the honey mustard gives it a nice little kick. And then my side is some potato chips. And basically, I just grabbed a handful of potato chips and threw it on my plate. McCall, would you mind going through your components? And you can say hello first as well.
I'm so excited to be here and to eat lunch today. So mine is very similar. It's my go-to turkey sandwich. We didn't have provolone, which is my favorite. So I used cheddar. And I always like to broil it. And then turkey, avocado, spinach, handful of chips. And then my husband brought home fresh chocolate chip cookies yesterday. And so I decided that looks good too. So that's mine.
That looks awesome. Thank you. So we are going to try to eat as we're talking to you today. So I'm going to preface this with please excuse dribbling food out the side of my mouth and talking.
Ditto.
And we're just not going to get too caught up in that. We're going to do the best we can to talk while we're eating. And we're going to try to have the meal within 30 minutes. So generally in a treatment setting, we set a general time frame for the eating portion of the meal. And for a lunch meal, our sense over time from doing a lot of these meals with people in person is that 30 minutes is a pretty reasonable time to complete a lunch meal. And it kind of works in your life as well, because we need to be able to eat our lunches or meals within a reasonable time frame if we're in a social setting or we have a short break at work or whatever it may be. So I'm going to actually set a timer. And I will let you all know when we are halfway through the meal so that you can kind of pace yourself, and you'll know you'll have about 15 more minutes left to complete the meal. And then I'll also give you another prompt when we have 5 minutes left. So for some people, it might be helpful to think about your pacing during the meal. You know, are you kind of staying steady, taking a bite? You know, you can kind of try to watch my pacing. I'm not really sure how that's going to go since I'm going to be talking, but I'm going to definitely finish my meal within 30 minutes. So feel free to follow along. The other thing I'm just going to review with you is called intention setting. And this is something that we do at our center. And it's about really thinking about what you want to accomplish in the meal, so that you're going into the meal with just some goal, some kind of idea in your head about how you want to experience the meal. So some examples of intentions that people make might be, I'm going to try to be really engaged in the conversation during the meal so that I'm not distracted by my worry thoughts during meal. Or some people might really say, I'm going to really work on my pacing today. I want to eat steadily. I want to finish within 30 minutes. Some people might bring a more challenging meal, and just that their intention is to complete a really challenging meal, to try something new. Some people use intentions that might relate to skills that they're learning in their treatment and might want to just access a particular skill during the week. So if you're able to set up an intention, I would say now is a good time to do that. We're going to start eating now. As I'm eating, I'm going to kind of interview McCall. I have a lot of questions.
I've got a head start on eating. Sorry.
Yeah. Eat now. And just so you know, McCall may eat a little less while we're eating, but once we finish the 30 minutes and we're going to actually come together and do, I'm going to teach you a little something, a little skill at the end. While we're learning the skill, that's going to be McCall's real opportunity to eat. So I just don't want her to feel pressured that she has to be eating the food while she's talking a lot, because she's going to be talking a lot. So I'm setting the timer now. No rush. You have 30 minutes. I'm just going to let you know when we're halfway through. Okay. McCall, I'm so excited that you're here. We met 8 years ago at a conference, and I remember just being struck by your amazing way that you have about yourself and the way you communicate with people. And I loved the concept of Southern Smash. And so maybe to start, if you could just tell us a little bit about Southern Smash, what it is, what you guys do, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so I started Southern Smash in 2012, November 2012, and it was a crazy harebrained idea of mine and a way to fulfill a promise I made to pay it forward. And, you know, I wanted to create something that was real and relevant, right? So if I go to a college campus and I sit at a table that says Eating Disorder 101, probably not a lot of people are going to come talk to me. But if we're smashing scales, we've got music, we're handing out t-shirts and koozies, that's going to catch people's attention. And so that's really how it started. And it's a sequence of activities. It's not just smashing scales. It's a sequence of our own unique body positive activities that helps people free themselves from the thoughts and numbers that weigh them down. So it's an event that everyone can relate to, because while not everyone might not struggle with an eating disorder, everyone struggles with this notion of not feeling good enough, whether that manifests in food, body, career, relationships, however that manifests. And so that's what we ask people to bring. So it's a really eye-opening event to start a conversation on something that's a pretty serious epidemic in our country.
Absolutely. And so the logistics are that people literally will bring their home scales just to get them out of the house. And
we absolutely encourage people to bring their own scales, and we also provide scales. So at every event, we have our own set of scales. And so yeah, but we definitely encourage folks to bring their own scales as well. We decorate the scales and we write messages. What would you say to your scale? So we really get this cathartic experience out there of what it feels like to truly destroy something that, well, to me, you know, the scale defined everything about my day, my worth, everything. And so to finally destroy that was so cathartic. And I love giving that experience to other people.
Yeah, that is so empowering, because I think a lot of people who may be tuning into this webinar really have that experience where the scale kind of rules them, rules their mood, rules their behaviors. You know, that you start your day potentially with that number on the scale, and then that really dictates not only how you feel, but also maybe how you even take care of yourself in terms of the way you decide you're going to go about your eating for the day,
your interactions with people, what you're going to wear.
Yeah. So do you ever find that people are hesitant around the idea of the scale smashing and feel almost like it's there's such a tie to the scale experience that it can feel almost sort of destabilizing to get it in that way?
It's I think majority. So when we mainly do these events on college campuses, and majority of folks are like, "Give me the sledgehammer! I can't wait." I also travel and will. I spend a lot of time speaking and connecting with patients in treatment centers across the country, and so if it feels right and if it's safe for the patients, we'll do a scale smash there, and not just a scale smash, a Southern Smash type of event there, catered to meet their needs, of course. But you know, I feel like when I go to treatment centers, the scale means so much more than maybe just your average college student, that they might have a really unhealthy relationship with it, or they might just be like, I really don't even think about it. But when you go into a treatment center of someone that has struggled with an eating disorder, it brings this whole different level of emotions and the ties to it. So I just always invite them to come with an open heart, and that if they're not ready to smash, that is totally understandable, because for so many people, this scale is like their best friend. And I get it, because it was mine. It's your best friend and your best enemy. So it's your frenemy. So there's definitely a lot of hesitation amongst treatment patients, but definitely on the college front, they're pretty damn excited to come. And a lot of times, one time at UNC, a bunch of guys came up to me, and you know, sometimes they get stereotypical males that just want to smash something, and I said, okay, you can. And they said, no, we're on the wrestling team. And I was like, oh, you know, because they live and die by the number on the scale, and they were like so excited. So people bring different viewpoints, and I've learned a lot along the way in these past, you know, years doing this, that wow, you know, whether it's a wrestling team, a road team, or someone that has been struggling, everything that can come up around our emotional ties to the scale.
Yeah, I bet for a lot of people, just even the concept of letting go of your scale with a number is so foreign and so hard to even contemplate. You know, one of the things that we do, so, you know, if there's anybody listening who really connects with this idea of being very tied to the scale, of using the scale throughout the day as kind of a check-in with yourself, where you become kind of reliant on it, whether it's because you're looking for reassurance, or you feel afraid and you just want to make sure everything's okay, or however it is that you might use the scale. Sometimes the way we might work up to a scale smash would be to really first begin to get data about how often you're using the scale and why. And then what we'll do in treatment is just very slowly try to chip away at that and slowly reduce the use of the scale. So we hear many people who will use the scale multiple times a day. And so we begin to try to use the scale instead of 5 times in the day, maybe we work to 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, then trying to reduce the number of times during the week. And it's what we really find is that it's incredibly liberating, and it also opens the door to be able to make some behavioral changes that are really important, and and frees you up to be able to make those changes. So
Yeah.
it's a great concept. Would you be able to share with us a little bit more about what brought you to Southern Smash?
Yeah. So I struggled with an eating disorder for 15 years, and I struggled in much shame and silenced by that shame. I struggled in the way that so many people do, and that I'm not that bad. I can't be that bad because I looked quote unquote normal. And I was taught through my high school education by my PE teacher, that eating disorders are very black and white. You either have anorexia or you have bulimia, and you have to look a certain way to say, I need help. And so I just continued on building this kind of arsenal of symptoms, the restriction and the binging and the purging and all the things that go along with it. And it was just this revolving door, never really saying like, oh, I look like the starving celebrity on the cover of Us Weekly, so I must be sick enough now. And so I just kept thinking like, I'll be better when I graduate college, or when I get married, or when this happens. And the society around me kept saying, oh, McCall just has really great willpower, And so I just got all these really mixed messages, and it came to a head. And at 29, I went to treatment at the Carolina House in December 14th, 2010. And I was there for 3 months. And, when I left there, that's when I was like, I knew way deep down, there's this quiet voice of mine that said, my story needs to be told and I need to pay it forward. I had no idea how I was going to do that. But the huge thing that was missing for me when I got home was group support. Clearly we didn't have virtual support. I didn't have any groups in Baton Rouge where I lived at the time. And I needed that. So I started writing a blog, and I held it as an anonymous blog for a year. And then I finally shared an entry with my best friend, Anne. And then she convinced me to share it. And then that's kind of the tipping point of when people started to realize that I had struggled, and then they started to reach out to me and say, thank you, for sharing and being vulnerable. And I kept writing. And that's when a group at LSU said, hey, will you come speak? And I just was like, well, maybe I'll just do it this one time. And I called and said, well, I've got this idea for an event afterwards. And so that's kind of where the idea started with Southern Smash, and just thinking, oh, it'll be just this one time. It'll be fun. But after we did it that one day at LSU, I was like, I got to do this again. And that's truly what kept pushing me forward. Was just, I had no idea what I was doing. I literally made it up as I went along, but there was this passion and fire inside me that just said, keep going, keep going. And it caught on because I think the people, and especially that college age, they're ready for a change, and they're ready to break that diet culture and to break that mentality that you have to look a certain way, and that our worth is defined by this exterior beauty. And so I think that's why it's really caught on. And in this past July, we merged with the Alliance for Eating Disorders Awareness. And it was a beautiful marriage, as Joanne and I like to call it, because Joanne and I, who's the founder of the Alliance, have been friends for many years. We've worked together for many, many years. And the, Alliance is 19 years old, and she's just this force of a woman. And in, November 2018, I, in conjunction with them, hosted a fundraiser in New Orleans to create a free clinician-led support group. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to merge with the Alliance, is because we go to communities, we raise funds, and the proceeds stay within that community to form free clinician-led support groups. So to finally bring back to Louisiana what I was missing was so huge. And I was like, okay, well, I just spent the last 2 months fundraising for the Alliance while also doing Southern Smash. Our programs are so perfect. Like, let's get married. So we officially married in July, and it's been super exciting to see, us come together and to do more together.
And so how can people access those groups?
Well, we have 19 support groups across the country. We have plans to add more, of course. And you can access them. You can go on our website and check out where our locations are. Obviously, right now, with everything happening, we've had to push pause on the support groups, but instead what we have, which I think is really cool, is we're hosting virtual check-ins. So for folks struggling with an eating disorder, like tonight, there's a virtual check-in, and we have upwards of like 50 people on these Zoom calls, and you can raise your hand and talk about what's going on. You can get validation from other folks. It's a pro recovery, amazing free resource that we're offering. And it's Mondays and Saturdays. You can look again on our Facebook or Instagram. Yeah. And it's awesome. I mean, I think tonight we have like, I don't know how many signed up, and it's really cool to see that many people utilizing this resource. And we're so thankful. Like as soon as all of this happened, there was no hesitation. We were like, okay, virtual, we'll figure it out. And we did. And it's been a real big game changer for a lot of people.
So we're all so isolated right now. So that's an amazing connection. A couple of questions for you. I'm curious, and I'm sure that people watching are really curious. Can you share a little bit about what was your turning point, in your own recovery? I guess I'm going back to your own recovery. What you mentioned that at some point you ended up going into treatment, which was a very brave move, a huge step. And can you share a little bit about what went on for you internally that got you there?
Yeah, so I went to treatment. I was 29 years old, so I felt old. Now 10 years later, I'm like, wow. But I was later in life than a lot of the younger women. It was an all-female facility, 17 and up. So a lot of them were early 20s, and I was married. And, I just felt like the world's biggest failure. I quit what I thought was my dream job. I, was leaving to go to treatment I would be gone during Christmas, my wedding anniversary. So I really just had all of this shame around feeling like a failure and not feeling like I was sick enough to be there. And my therapist there, Christy, was like this horrifically squeaky wheel to remind me all the time, you need to be here. Your eating disorder is severe. You need to be here. And about a month and a half in, I was feeling really stuck. And I feel like every single person that's ever gone through treatment, whatever level it might be, we get to a place where we're like, get me out. I'm so tired of this. I got to go. And I literally walked into Christy's office. I was like, I'm done. I miss my husband. I miss my dogs. And she ignored me and was like, sit down. And she said, McCall, what does recovery look like to you? And when I first went into treatment, recovery was this like mystical land that I couldn't ever imagine. I couldn't imagine food in my pantry or going to the beach without like prepping. And so I began to realize as I went through the motions and the groups and whatnot in treatment that recovery wasn't going to be this like line in the sand, that I cross and then boom, I'm recovered. It was going to be a series of seemingly insignificant decisions that added up to huge change. And I looked at Christy in that moment and I said, recovery would be walking on the beach in a bathing suit with Jordan, my husband, not because my body looks a certain way or because I'm in a certain bikini or because I've earned the right to do it, but because finally I'm living my life out here with those that I love and no longer trapped as a prisoner in my head. And she said, okay. And she drew a line and she forked it into two. And she said, here you are. You did not choose to have this eating disorder, which was something so hard for me to grasp because it was like, this is my fault. And she constantly was, again, a squeaky wheel. People don't choose cancer. People don't choose diabetes. You do not choose this.
So sorry. That's the 15-minute. We're halfway through with the 15 minutes. Go for it.
Said, but now you're here choosing recovery and choosing to fill your toolbox with skills that help you cope with life without your eating disorder. So here you are, and the line forked into two. And she said, you can either choose to crash diet, to use symptoms, to cover up, to not go to the beach and letting the eating disorder win and letting life continue to pass you by. Or you can choose to get up, to go on that walk, knowing your history, knowing there's going to be anxiety, knowing there might be some fear, but you're going to choose to do it anyway, because what you value is a life with those you love, living in the present moment. And that choice is yours. And while in the moment, I obviously didn't know this was like my Oprah aha moment, but I did walk out of there feeling empowered, feeling like finally, this is mine. I am back in the driver's seat and I can choose which way I'm going to go. And it was this moment too, that it was, finally like, it's my life. And I get to do this. And I had such motivation because I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be a mom so desperately. And so I had this external motivation to really dig in and to choose that recovery path, not just this one time and cross the line in the sand, but each and every time that I had that fork in the road.
Yeah. I mean, so it's connecting with a purpose or something that is meaningful to you, anything that's really meaningful to you that you want for yourself, that sounds like it served as just an ongoing motivation, just staying connected to what you really wanted.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your therapist did a really good job of even creating an image in your head that you could access, and it could be just that reminder of keep your eye on the prize. And I think we're gonna, at the end of our meal, we're gonna talk a little bit about values and connecting with motivation, because I think many people who might be listening might say, I don't even know what I want. I don't know what kind of life there is for me outside of my eating disorder.
Right.
Because they understand an eating disorder can be like your partner, and it can be your best friend, and it takes up so much space and so much time that oftentimes it's at the exclusion of everything else. So it's really hard for, I think, a lot of people to have this idea of something else that could guide them, something else that they could become.
Yeah, I think I get a lot of, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in treatment. I'm like, I got you. It's not like I skipped through the doors excited, but I remember one day in group, I was just in a little black hole like we so often are, and I was grumpy and didn't want to be there, and just really just not into it. And the group leader that day of our DBT group said, well, why are you here? And I'm like, what kind of question is that? And she's like, who are you here for? And I'm like, ugh. And so I kind of looked at her and I was like, not for me. I'm here, I guess, today for my husband and my family. She said, okay. And I was waiting for her to say, now McCall, we have to be yay recovery for you, and you have to want this for yourself. And then that day, I didn't want it. And it was so cool that she let me hold that space of just being like, I don't want to be here, and I'm going to show up anyway for those that I love. And that day, they were my motivation. Another day, it might be me. Another day, it might be my goal to have children one day. So it was a very, kind of permission to show up for different people, different days, and not having it always be rah, rah, yay for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think, just that flexibility, because at one moment you might not at all be connecting with, I want a bigger life. I want more to my life. You might just be connecting with, I just want my family to get off my back. Mm-hmm. And I think at the end of the day, what's most important is that there's something. Can you find something? Even if it's just, I want to be less miserable. Or I want to have, I want to pursue an academic career, or I want to have some kind of professional career, or, I want to get my body healthier again. Like, that's the one thing I'm just worried about. I recognize how this illness impacts my physical health. And that's really the one thing that really feels important to me right now. So whatever it is in that moment, really giving yourself an opportunity to really think about what you want. And we'll do a little bit more of that today. Can you share, you've shared a little bit already about some of the most impactful interventions in your recovery process, little moments here and there. Can you tell us more, if you could, about some of the other things that might have been helpful to you, even concrete things? So, for example, did you have any kind of methods to approach your eating schedule that helped you to get on track? Concrete or more kind of loose, whatever you feel is best.
Yeah, I think that, the toughest time for me and for everyone is right when you discharge from treatment. That, I call it like wobbly legs, like, right, you're trying to get your feet back underneath you, figuring out life at home. And even within like the PHP realm, it was trying to figure out, nutrition on my own, not on my own. Clearly I had a dietitian, but I'm eating by myself or whatever it might have you. Some things that I did when I did go home that were really helpful was I was a horrific calorie counter. And so I got rid of all labels in my house. So I went and got all the containers, and I would even write on the exchange, just so there's so little that we can control. And that's like one really positive way to control our environment of really in a supportive way. So I got rid of calories. I got rid of all clothing that reminded me of my eating disorder, which was pretty much everything in my closet, because I wanted to start over, and I wanted to finally be living my life and figure out who I was. And so everything in my closet was dripping with eating disorder labels, whether it was skinny jeans, fat jeans. I knew what I did to get into those shorts. So they all had to go. I really just tried to wipe the slate clean. I also would put up 911 cards like in my bathroom and in my kitchen of just my go-to coping skills of, you know, whether it was to go sit outside or some type of distraction, to call, you know, my husband or whatever it might be. So I tried to kind of really have those on hand. I struggled a lot with exercise. So really just by the Bible of exactly what my dietitian said for, you know, this is your gentle walk today or whatever it might be. It didn't mean that I did it perfectly, not by a long shot. You know, there was many slips, many falls along the way. And I think the big difference is that I tried my best, not perfectly, to not beat myself up, but rather to get up and do the next best thing. I mean, for me, next best thing was like my mantra, my everything.
That's great. And that's a lot of really helpful, concrete ideas that you shared. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about what recovery looks like? Because I think some people imagine, you know, is it a light bulb and all of a sudden you never think about food or your body anymore? Right. Or is it a very gradual experience?
It's super gradual, and it's so gradual, it's painful, you know, because you're like, you have this feeling of you come home and you're scared to death because all of a sudden you're faced with all the ghosts that you left and that you're going to a place like kind of the scene of the crime, right? And then also you have maybe family members or friends that are like, okay, cool, McCall's home. All right, where are we going to dinner? Let's have a party. Who's going to host cocktail? You know, where I'm like, hang on, I'm trying to figure out my life right now. So, you know, that it's so gradual. And it was just, like I said, a series of really small decisions that started to perpetuate this life in recovery. And it was really about, you know, acknowledging and doing a lot of grief work, honestly, about everything that I had lost to my eating disorder. I did a lot of that with my therapist in the after treatment. And just acknowledging that, you know, it is going to get better. I mean, some days was white knuckling it. And then some days I had a great day, you know, and I'll never forget the moment. It was probably months after treatment. I was walking through the house and, you know, a chocolate chip cookie was, because my husband had, once again, had bought them and they were fresh. And I grabbed one on my way walking through the house and I ate it. 5 minutes later, I was like, oh, I forgot to freak out about eating the cookie. I'm freaking out because I forgot to freak out. And so it was like this wonderful moment of like, oh my God. And like, those are the key moments and the beautiful moments of recovery. There's so many really tough ones, but you know, what I always tell people is going back to the basics, right? So I'm sure, you know, if anyone that's ever read my blog knows I've encountered quite a few rough hands in life with my daughter, and you know, she's a cancer survivor and whatnot. And so going through those really rough moments in life, one thing that has always risen to the surface for me in maintaining recovery has been stick to the basics. And the basics is your meal plan, right? So 3 meals, 3 snacks, or whatever you can manage in whatever patch you're going through in life. Like, stick to the basics, and that helps you so much through that path of recovery, to maintain it and just to even grow on it. So I'm really like, I am a meal plan kind of girl. Like, and one of the things is like, get up, eat breakfast. Coffee's not breakfast, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy to hear you say that, because really when we're doing, for example, CBT for eating disorders, the foundation of CBT is a regular eating schedule. And it sounds like that really worked for you, whether it's a meal plan or whether it's something that you put together with a therapist or independently. There's something really powerful about, in a way, almost robotically at the beginning, having an eating schedule and also planning ahead for how you're going to make sure that there are foods that are right for you wherever you are in your recovery. How are you going to have access to those foods as you're planning ahead? So I think it's not surprising that you found that so helpful. But it's really interesting to hear you share that story about the cookie, because it sounds like you moved from a foundation of regular eating, scheduled eating with a meal plan, to a place where you could actually connect with your intuition. And in the moment, you felt you wanted something and you were able to have it. So can you share a little bit more about that, about what it's like to move from a more robotic or prescribed plan that keeps you on track at the beginning to a space where you can begin to get a sense of, I feel like a cookie right now, and so I'm going to have it?
Yeah, I think that's one of those like mythical lands that you're not sure exist when you're going through the motions, and the difficulty of treatment. It does exist. And, I think by sticking to the meal plan and then progressing through intuitive eating for me included a lot of giving myself grace, because I was finally getting to eat the foods that I had forbidden for so long. And so a lot of it went from, I'm working on this intuitive eating, but that was too much, or, that wasn't enough. And so not feeling guilty if it was too much, and knowing to make up for it if it wasn't enough. So kind of swinging back and forth through that pendulum without going to an extreme of any type of like symptom use or slip. Was really
5 more minutes of the meal portion, just so people can pace themselves.
Yeah. So that was, something that in giving myself a lot of grace in that period. And a lot of people now always ask me, they're like, do you still have a meal plan? And no, I don't. But, because it's in my bones. I know exactly what I want. And I wake up and I've got 2 little ones. So I am not perfect by any means. And I will have days where it's 9:30 or 10 and I'm like, whoops, breakfast, because I've been trying to get them out the door and whatever it might be. But I will have breakfast, and it just kind of will push back, but I make sure I'm getting all of my needs. So, you have days like that, and that's okay. It's just a matter of, let's make sure, if it ever gets to, you might need to set, a timer for yourself. So early in my recovery, I would say, okay, I'm waking up at 8:30 and I'm going to eat this for breakfast. And I knew. Nowadays, like today, I'm like, oh my God, I'm starving. Well, it's 9 o'clock, I've been up for an hour. So let's get going and make our day happen. So, just kind of giving yourself forgiveness, but also making sure your body's getting everything that you need. And now it's not an excuse for restriction. When I look at my watch and go, ooh, my body's, I'm listening to my body and it's saying, hello, and so making sure that I'm getting my needs met. And I think too, it's important to get your needs met, not only, nourishing your body, but resting it and moving it with joy and filling up that spiritual piece, whether it's, for me, or I guess mindfulness piece would be a better word. For me, it's writing. I love to write. I love music. And so finding how are you filling your spirit in all these different types of ways, nutrition, movement, rest, and just that mindfulness piece.
Yeah. In a way, it's a really hard time right now to find your passions, or find activities that are absorbing or distracting or engaging. It's hard because we have so much going on in our lives at this moment, really, but it's also maybe a time where things have slowed down a little bit on some level, and a good opportunity to begin exploring that for people who may not be connecting so much with hobbies or pastimes that are engaging and distracting. Because we find in the treatment setting that distraction and other things to focus on, those are wonderful tools to be able to use in the moment.
They're wonderful tools. And I did a Facebook Live. Well, Joanne and I did a Facebook Live recently. We've been doing a lot of those to help support people in this. But one of the greatest things that you can do is to pick up the phone, and especially right now when we're all very isolated and people live alone, pick up the phone and FaceTime someone. Just do it. I think a lot of times you go through in your head, they might be busy, I don't want to bother them. Just pick up the phone. Just FaceTime. And not just a call or a text, but like FaceTime, so you can see someone and you can connect with someone, because that's kind of where we are right now with in virtually checking in with each other.
Yeah. Connection is so important. Yes. And to try to find new outlets to foster that possibility. And it's soon we'll start to try to create a little bit of a list of some of those resources that people can use right now. So we finished the meal portion of our episode, our meet and eat today. So I noticed, and McCall, you can probably get to your lunch now. You must be hungry. Um, I noticed, it's funny, I haven't had a timed eating experience in a while, and I noticed I finished my meal in 15 minutes. So I don't know if anyone else had that experience. For me personally, the 30 minutes was more than enough time to finish. You can see I got my whole meal done. And oftentimes in a treatment setting, what we'll do after the meal is a quick check-in to see how people are feeling after the meal. But what we try to do actually, early on, we used to do a lot more process. What are the feelings that are coming up around the food? Where's your head right now after you've completed eating? And what we found actually is what is more helpful than opening up is actually to close up a little bit after a meal. So we often now, rather than trying to access a whole lot of feeling, we want to just focus on, we did it. We're done with the meal. Let's move on. Let's not dwell on it, worry about it, calculate what it was. It's done. You did a great job at taking care of your body, and now we're going to move on from it. And so it links back to that distraction skill, which is a really common one. Oftentimes after meals, we just recommend getting engaged in something else completely. Mm-hmm. I also just want to say another thing about the distraction that we used while we were eating. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the concept of mindful eating, which is it's a great concept. The idea that when we're eating, we want to be present, we want to be attending to how we're feeling, we want to actually experience the food, taste it, take in the texture, be aware of how it's impacting how we're feeling. The challenge with that, and what we find with most of the people that we work with eating disorders, is that being too aware of what's happening in the moment can actually be really triggering and can lead to more anxiety and stress around eating. So what we're doing today with our Meet and Eat, and what we're going to be doing a few times a week now during this crisis, when we're offering this service to the community, we're really working on distracting while we eat. So we want you to come, bring a meal, try to make it as balanced as possible, try to keep up with the pacing so that you eat the meal within 30 minutes, and then as much as possible, engage with our guest, engage in the conversation. And now that we're finished with our meal, we are gonna move on, and this is what we often do in a treatment setting. We're gonna learn something new. We're gonna learn a new skill. And so in honor of McCall and what I think we're hearing from her, one of the most important parts of her movement forward out of her eating disorder was that she connected with what is important to her, what she wants from her life. And as she mentioned, that would change from day to day. You don't always feel steady in what you want. But for our session today, I want to talk a little bit about values. We see values as a really important part of the healing process. And often one of the first things that we really need to do when we begin the journey of recovery, we really want to tap into, why are you doing this? Why do you want to move on from your eating disorder? And the reality is that you might not be sure you want to move on. There's maybe just a little part of you that wants to move on. There may be ways that the eating disorder is serving you really critically. And so we want to honor that. But at the same time, there is, in most people, some reason why they want to get better. And so the way we can sometimes access that is talking about values. And when we talk about values, we're not really thinking about goals. We're really thinking about, deep down inside you, what is really important to you? What are the qualities you want to develop and represent as a person? What do you stand for? Who do you want to be in your relationships? Who do you want to be in your professional or academic pursuits? Essentially, our values are really our deepest hopes and desires for how we want to relate to the world around us and to the people in our world. So when we think about values, we're not thinking about goals. We're not thinking, I want to get married at some point, or I want to progress in my career, or I want to win some kind of award, or goals are wonderful. but we're not talking about goals when we're talking about values. Values is more global. Values are more global. It's more of a North Star. It's like a compass. It's the direction that you want to move in your life. And values are there for you every day, ongoing. So it's about how you want to live your life. So, for example, in McCall's story, having children was a goal of hers. That felt really important to her. But in order to get there, she recognized that she needed to live by the value of wanting to be someone who is taking care of their health, taking care of her body, approaching each day, trying to improve her mental state. She wanted to be a good partner, be a present partner to her spouse, so that she is creating a foundation to have a family. So I think it would be helpful for us to try to get more practice in how you select your values and then use them as part of your daily routine. And I use the word select intentionally because we can choose our values. And it doesn't mean that you need to live by your values every day as of today. And it doesn't even mean, if this is a new concept for you, that you have to even be driven and feel those values really intensely. It just means that you're going to think about it and you're going to try to pick some. Pick whatever values you can connect with, even just a little bit in the moment. And these values can be in all different domains. So we think about values interpersonally in our relationships. You know, what kind of family member do you want to be? Or what kind of a friend do you want to be? Or what kind of a parent do you want to be? We think about values in the domain of health. How do you want to care for your body? How do you want to treat yourself day in and day out? We might think about values in our professional lives or in our academic lives or in our pursuits of hobbies or other meaningful activities. How do you want to approach those experiences? Do you want to approach them with an open mind, with excitement, with passion, with effort, with persistence? We can think about spirituality. How do you want to develop yourself as a spiritual person if that feels important to you? So there are many, many different domains where we can explore our values. And so I'm going to do a little exercise with you. Oftentimes people find this to be a really helpful way to connect with values. So I'm going to ask you to think about and imagine the future. And imagine that you're 80 years old and it's your birthday. And everybody in your life when you're 80 is coming together to celebrate you. Okay, so cute. Your daughter's in the back behind you. I'm sure you see that too. Anyway, working from home. So at this party, there are all sorts of people who have been in your life from this time in your life, but also people you haven't even met yet. So there may be people that are going to be friends of yours later on in your life, or people that are going to be involved in your life, you know, once you're in your 60s or 70s. If you don't have children yet and you're going to have children, maybe your kids are there and they're also going to be speaking about you at this event. And basically everybody's getting up and going to say a few words. Each person is going to say a few words about you. And so I'm going to ask you to think about what you would like to hear them say. When people kind of sum you up as a person and what your life has meant to them and what you have meant to them over all of these years, what would you love to hear them say? And so, McCall, what thoughts come to mind for you?
I mean, honestly, I hope people say at my 80th birthday that I was kind and living, because I'm still alive.
Yeah.
Just a really authentic life and was someone that they could count on and was always true to myself. I'm trying to, it's such a great, deep kind of question. I'm going to pose this to my husband tonight.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Go ahead.
It sounds like you're focusing a lot on, and what feels most important to you are your values in relationship to connection to other people. That's what I'm hearing from you, that you feel like what comes to mind first is you want to be, you want to be thought of as a person that was connected and kind and available and present. And so that sounds like those are some values for that domain, and that it tells me that that domain is very important to you, which is a great thing, because that those values in that domain can really drive you. And so the way we often use values in our work, in our therapy, is that we use it as a reason to do hard things. We use it as a reminder of why we might be doing hard things. We use it to decide in the moment if an action or a behavior that you're engaging in is in line with your values, or is it not in line with your values? And it doesn't mean that everything you do is always going to be in line with your values. That's completely unrealistic and not what we're going for. We're not going for some kind of perfect performance. But if you can really connect with your values, my sense and what I have found from people that I've worked with is that that is extremely motivating and inspiring, and can help you in dark moments to stay on track. It also can help if you're thinking about eating disorders in particular. It's also really helpful to think about the health domain and really truly what you want for yourself in terms of how you take care of your body and how you maintain your health. So I think that's another thing to highlight for yourself as you're going through this exercise. And I also just want to mention that I don't think ever, I've done this exercise with people many, many times before, and I have never heard anybody say to me, on my 80th birthday, I really hope people talk about how skinny I was.
Right.
Or how controlled I was with my food. People just, when you think about your life and what you want to accomplish on this earth, typically that's not really what you're left with when all is said and done. And when you're really reflecting on who you've been and what you've contributed. And so instead, I usually hear people talk about their connections and the kind of person that they want to be in terms of being loyal and compassionate and caring. I hear people talk a lot about what they want to do within the community, like how they want to be giving back to the world. And that is a really powerful place to be, I think, in recovery, because it takes us out of our heads and into connecting with the world and thinking about, is there any way that you can be of service to others in this world? And I think when people really can connect with that fuels a lot, because that means there's connection, there's purpose, there's self-esteem building, So that idea of connecting to the community, of giving back, of doing something helpful, even if it's small, that can really generate a lot of good feelings within yourself.
Absolutely. And I think, I think one of the biggest things that helped me in my recovery was starting Southern Smash. Not everyone has to go and start, a foundation and, work on it for years or share your story with thousands, but there is a piece of being able to have your story have a purpose, is really valuable. And that's something that I've worked hard with Southern Smash, and now with the Alliance, that, it's really cool to see that I'm now handing over the mic to other folks on, with our Smash Talks and whatnot. And people are, writing out their stories for us. So it's really cool for us to be able to give that opportunity to others, and because it can be so amazingly healing.
Yeah, it really fuels your soul. There's no question.
It does.
Well, McCall, thank you so much. It was so nice to see. I haven't seen you in such a long time, so it was so nice to sit here with you. And for anyone who is listening today, I really appreciate your tuning in, and I hope that you'll join us again on our website. We have a whole schedule of guests who are coming up, and I think we have a lot to share. And also, just if you use this as an opportunity to make sure that you have your lunch, and that you complete your lunch, and take care of yourself in that way, certainly there's a number of different benefits. So McCall, have a great day, and everybody else.